Okay, so we will be talking about or clarifying some points regarding the pre-recorded lectures on population fluctuations. So to get the ball rolling when it comes to class participation, I will entertain three answers from the class for your class participation score for today. To which type of species are selected versus case selected are fluctuations in population size more common? Once again, to which type of species are selected or case selected are fluctuations in population size more common? Let's start with Sean. Go ahead.
Hello, am I audible po, ma'am?
Yes, I can hear you.
Um, our selected species are more prone to fluctuations, great more than K-selected, since they are quantity over quality, meaning that they reproduce a lot and they also have high mortality rates. So they really tend to have a lot of fluctuations.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's see if Bryson agrees or disagrees with you.
I agree din po na it's also are selected. It's like the more common to have fluctuations because they have like more quantity over quality. Like the case selected, the parents take care of the children. Pero the are selected, once they're born, they're just out na kagad.
Okay, thank you for that. And Manili, do you agree or disagree with your classmates?
Ako po, I agree with both of them po since our selected is generally not cared for by the parents pagdating po sa pagtutulog na lang po ng mga birds. Unlike case-selected animals like sabihin po natin like cats po, ganun. So, the case-selected tend to be more, yung mga babies na they tend to survive more compared to sa R-selected po.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So, to confirm the answer of your classmates, fluctuations in population size are in fact more common in our selected species. And apart from yung characteristic ng our selected species na nabanggit nila, meron pang ibang characteristics, no, yung our selected species that make them more susceptible to rapid increases and crashes in population size. So, to clarify with everybody, again to remind everybody, our selected species are those that produce large numbers of offspring but invest little to no parental care. And dahil doon, yung survival nila depends largely on environmental conditions. So yung laki ng population size can swing dramatically based on factors like food availability, predation, or even climate events. Now, apart from that, our selected species also grow and reproduce quickly. So dahil doon nagkakaroon sila ng rapid population booms pag yung conditions ay favorable. Pero dahil maiksi ang lifespans nila, they have very short lifespans, this also means that yung populations nila can crash just as fast when conditions become bad. So pag naubusan na sila ng pagkain, pag nagkaroon ng extreme weather, pwedeng biglang bagsak yung population size nila. Now, dahil sa kanilang sensitivity to environmental changes, our selected species often colonize unstable or unpredictable environments. So kung ikukumpara mo sila sa case-selected species, mas kaya nila mag-survive or mag-thrive sa fluctuating environments kung saan yung resources natin ay nagfa-fluctuate din. Kasi nga, sanay na sila na yung populations nila ay nag increase exponentially when conditions are ideal, pero tanggap din nila or sanay na rin sila when their populations experience sharp declines due to bad conditions, katulad ng disease outbreaks, extreme weather, or habitat changes. So, ang tandaan natin, unlike K-selected species, ang R-selected species do not heavily regulate their population size based on carrying capacity. And so, nagkakaroon sila ng tendency na mag-overshoot ng available resources. Lumalampas sila sa carrying capacity ng ecosystem. And so this could lead also to sudden collapses when food or space runs out. Okay, so yun. So nakapag-warm up na tayo. Hopefully, we'll hear from another set of students for the second question. To which species are population cycles more common? So pagdating naman sa pag-cycle ng pagdami or pag-iksi, based on season or based on resources, anong uri ng species, R versus K, mas common ito? Let's hear from Neil.
Our selected species have more common cycles as their lifespans are shorter, which means that there are more generations and their populations decline easier or rise faster.
Okay, thank you for that, Neil. Mariela, do you agree or disagree?
I think K-selected species are more on cycles po.
Okay, so Mariela disagrees. Natalie, tiebreaker. R or K selected ang mas nagsacycle?
I believe it's R selected yung mas nagsacycle because nga they have short lifespans, so there would be more generations in the same period of time compared to the K selected species.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So the answer is actually in the pre-recorded lectures, but just to reiterate it here, cycles are more common in R selected species, but they can, I guess, also occur in some K-selected species under specific ecological conditions. Pero again, ang questions natin is saan siya mas common? So ang sagot talaga is R-selected. Kasi ang key difference dyan is that R-selected species experience yung tinatawag na boom and bust cycle, kung saan sobrang dumadami sila at certain times of the year and then sobrang kumukonte. Okay? Whereas K-selected species exhibit more gradual fluctuations. So napapansin nyo, for example, sa mosquitoes, these are R-selected species. May times in the year na sobrang dami talagang mosquitoes kasi nga perfect yung environment para dumami sila. Pero pag nagpalit na yung environmental conditions, biglang konti naman ng mosquito populations. Yung cycles ng K-selected organisms are a little bit more gradual. For example, deer populations in the Western ecosystems. Pag spring, dahil mas maraming halaman na pwede nilang kainin, dumadami sila ng konti, kaya nagkakaroon ng hunting season for deer. Pero hindi siya ganun ka-established. Hindi siya kasing extreme ng sa our selected species. And that's why cycles are more common. Again, hindi sila exclusive ha, more common lang sa our selected species. Okay. So ngayon, let's move forward naman sa density-dependent versus density-independent populations. So between the graphs here, the graph on the left and the graph on the right, aling graph ang nagre-represent ng density-dependent populations at aling graph naman ang nagre-represent ng density-independent populations at bakit? Okay, Neil, go ahead.
Density-dependent populations are on the right, while density-independent is on the left.
Okay, and why?
That's because on the right graph, as population goes up, as density goes up, it goes down. Wait, its rate goes down as the density goes up.
Wait, just to make sure everybody is on the same page, the blue line represents birth rate and the red line represents death rate. So, what can you clarify your answer?
So parang as there's more, as the population grows or there's more, like, but as there's more, their birth rate goes down, which means that their population growth slows down and they die out. Parang ganun.
Okay, sige. Mariela, do you have anything to add to Neil's answer?
I agree that the left is density independent population and right is density dependent. For the left one, it's because the birth rate and the death rate are both constant as density increases. And for the right one, the birth rate decreases and the death rate increases as density increases.
Okay, thank you for that, Mariella. And Mika, what about you? What do you think?
I agree then po that the right is the density dependent while the left is density independent because as you can see the line is constant po.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So this is to confirm that the answers of your classmates are correct. The graph on the left, which have the birth rate and the death rate constant, represents density independent populations, while the graph on the right, where the birth rate goes down and the death rate goes up, represents a density dependent population. So please note that density-dependent populations are regulated by factors that become stronger, mas lumalaki yung impact nila as population size increases. This is more common in case-selected species like large mammals, trees, and some species of birds kasi merong mga regulating factors katulad ng competition, such as competition for food, for space, and for mates that affect their population size. Pwede ring predation kasi mas malaki yung population density ng prey, mas nakakapag-attract sila ng predators. Pero pwede ring mag-come into play yung mga bagay katulad ng disease and parasitism. Wait lang. Ayan, here, you can use this table to guide you to differentiate density-dependent versus density-independent populations. But as I was saying, disease and parasitism can also regulate density-dependent populations kasi disease spreads faster in crowded populations. So the higher the population density, the higher the spread of certain kinds of diseases. But we also have to worry about waste accumulation, yung wiwi tsaka pupo ng mga hayop. Kasi toxins tend to build up as population density increases. And so if you graph the birth rates and the death rates of density-dependent populations, birth rates tend to decline and death rates tend to rise as population size increases. And more often than not, this leads to stabilization at carrying capacity. So yung pagbaba ng birth rate at pagtaas ng death rate ay para siguraduhin na hindi lalampas ang density-dependent population sa carrying capacity ng ecosystem. And so density-dependent populations have a tendency to have an S-shaped or logistic growth curve. So the growth slows down and fluctuates around carrying capacity. On the other hand, for density-independent populations, these are regulated by factors that affect individuals regardless of their density. So you see them more in R-selected species, such as insects, weeds, some fish, crabs, and so on. And ang regulating factors nila, yung pwedeng makakontrol or maka-affect sa population nila, would include natural disasters, bagyo, wildfire, drought, baha. So these things can dramatically increase or decrease their population sizes. Apart from that, climate extremes din pwedeng pumatay or bumuhay sa kanila. Biglang mag-freeze or magkaroon ng cold snaps, magkaroon ng heat wave. Yan, pwedeng maka-apekto sa population nila. Then syempre, tayo din, we can also affect the population size of these organisms through pollution and habitat destruction. So when you graph the birth rates and death rates of these organisms, you will notice that the birth rates and death rates remain constant over different population sizes. So hindi siya masyadong nagbabago. Pero nagkakaroon tayo nung sinabi ko na kanina na boom and bust na pattern. Meaning, nagkakaroon ng rapid population increase followed by sudden crashes every once in a while due to environmental changes. And so yung growth curve nila is J-shaped or they have an exponential growth curve kasi nga their populations can rise quickly but they are also prone to sudden declines or sudden na pagkawala. Now, let's go through factors naman. Density-dependent or density-independent factors. Yung mga bagay sa kapaligiran natin na pwedeng makaapekto sa mga nabubuhay o namamatay na organismo. So this one is an example found in the pre-recorded video, so I won't talk more about it. Dun sa example ni Sir Al about logs and barnacles, are the logs, yung kahoy na lumulutang-lutang sa tubig, are they density-dependent or density-independent factors? So let's hear from 3 students. Henrik, go ahead.
Density independent factor po yung log.
Dahil?
Medyo nakalimutan sa explanation ni Sir sa pre-recorded lesson. Pero, kumbaga, even if the log, like yung log, makahit siya ng malaking population ng barnacles, hindi masyadong ma-affect niya yung population.
Okay, sige. Thank you for that. Henrik, sorry. Oops. Saves, go ahead.
Good morning po, Doc.
Morning.
Same po, logs are density independent. Same explanation po kapag po nakahit yung log ng group of barnacles. It's just the same impact regardless kung ilan po yung number ng barnacles. Yun lang po.
Okay. Mika, do you agree or disagree?
Yes po, I agree that it is density independent because it doesn't affect po.
Okay. Tama kayo na density independent siya, pero for at least 2 of the people who recited, medyo may issues yung reasoning. So, hindi porket density independent factor siya ay wala siyang effect sa population. Meron siyang effect sa population. Ang nagiging reason kung bakit density independent siya, kasi yung impact niya on barnacle populations ay hindi nakadepende kung gaano kadaming barnacles ang meron. Instead, yung logs, they're moved by external forces like waves, storms, yung high tide o kaya yung low tide, which affect barnacle populations regardless of their density. Kumbaga, yung pagkamatay ng barnacles nang dahil sa logs, they occur randomly, regardless kung madami or konti yung barnacles na nandun sa bato. So yung frequency at intensity ng log movement ay nakadepende sa environmental conditions, hindi sa dami ng barnacles. So katulad siya ng natural disasters like storms, hurricanes, extreme waves. So ang log ay nag-act na parang physical disturbance na tinatanggal nila yung barnacles from rocks in an unpredictable manner. So siguro para mas maintindihan niyo yung difference niya sa density-dependent factor, magbigay tayo ng density-dependent factor for barnacles para ma-compare nyo. Kunwari, space, yung dami ng bato na pwede nilang tiran. Pag mataas ang population density ng barnacles, bababa na yung birth rate nila at tataas na yung death rate kasi yung individuals ay magko-compete na sa dami ng surfaces ng bato na pwede nilang kabitan. So yung space is a density-dependent factor pagdating sa barnacles. Isa pang density-dependent na factor, predation. May species ng snails o kaya starfish na kumakain ng barnacles. And so pag madami na yung barnacles sa isang lugar, nakaka-attract sila ng mas maraming predator. So predation pressure increases with barnacle population density. So tumataas yung death rate nila. Another density-dependent factor would be disease o kaya parasites. Kasi mas maraming population density ng barnacles, mas bibilis yung disease transmission, so mas tataas yung death rate. Okay? So, para ma-reiterate ko lang, yung mga logs na tumatama sa barnacles, density independent sila kasi yung cause ng death, pag sila yung pumapatay sa barnacles, it's because of external physical factors. While factors like competition and predation are density dependent kasi mas tumitindi yung effect nila pag mataas yung population density ng barnacles. Okay? Sige. Let's go through another example. Ito, wala to dun sa pre-recorded lecture. So, oxygen, napaka-importante niyan sa survival ng kahit anong hayop. So, it's important for fish survival. Kasi fish, they depend on dissolved oxygen in the water for respiration. So, pag maraming oxygen sa environment, fish have a tendency to thrive and grow. However, pag dumami ang fish populations, pag tumaas ang population density nila, oxygen demands also rises. So, if masyadong maraming fish are present in a limited space, let's say meron kang fish pond, at masyadong marami ang fish, nagkakaroon ng mas maraming competition for oxygen. So, nagkakaroon ng stress, slower growth, at mortality, meaning may mga namamatay na fish. In extreme cases, oxygen depletion or hypoxia can even cause mass die-offs. Yung biglang lumulutang na lang yung mga isda, tas patay na sila. So this is especially true for enclosed or stagnant water bodies. So given that information, is oxygen availability density dependent or density independent pagdating sa fish populations? Henrik, go ahead.
They are density dependent because, as you said, the more the fish population, the less available oxygen there is.
Okay, thank you for that, Henrik. Manili, do you agree or disagree?
I agree po with Henrik's answer. I believe the oxygen availability is density dependent po because of the factors po na pag dumami po yung fish in yung oxygen, nililipid po siya.
Okay, Bryson, what do you think?
I also agree it's a density dependent factor because the more fish there are, the more competition for the limited oxygen there will be.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So your classmates are correct. So there is a density-dependent relationship between oxygen and fish in this scenario. Kasi when fish populations are low, there is less competition for oxygen, and so most fish in the pond would get enough to survive. But as fish population density increases, oxygen demand also rises, and so nagkakaroon ng mas matinding competition for available oxygen. Now, if the population exceeds yung oxygen supply, nagkakaroon ng stress, slower growth, at increased mortality. At ito yung nagre-regulate ng population size. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in extreme cases, pwede ring magkaroon ng oxygen depletion or hypoxia that can cause mass die-offs, especially if, again, enclosed yung water body, katulad ng lakes o kaya ponds. So, ang mechanism dito is that the effect of oxygen availability on fish survival depends on population density. Kumbaga, mas maraming isda, mas maraming oxygen consumption, nagkakaroon ng pagtaas ng competition, kaya siya density-dependent na limitation. Okay? So in this case, the oxygen becomes a density-dependent limiting factor when a population of fish grows too large. Okay, sige. Magstay tayo sa pond at sa fish. Kunyari, meron kang freshwater fish pond and napansin mo na pag dumadami yung isda, dumadami rin yung ammonia sa tubig. Kasi yung ammonia, yun yung ihi ng fish. Now, high ammonia levels can become toxic and lead to stress, disease, and increased mortality in the fish population. So in this case, is ammonia buildup a density-dependent or density-independent factor? Okay. Henrik, ikaw ulit?
It's it is a density dependent factor for me because as you already said, the more fish, the more ammonia there is present in the pond, which will control which will affect the mortality rate of certain fish because of water toxicity.
Okay, thank you for that, Henrik. Neil, do you agree or disagree?
I agree po because more fish po, more ammonia, leading to higher toxicity, leading to higher mortality rates po.
Okay, and Kelly, how about you?
I agree po na more fish produces more ammonia in the pond po.
Okay, which makes it density dependent or
Ah,
density
density
independent?
depend. It makes it density dependent.
Okay, thank you so much. So your classmates are correct. Ammonia buildup is a density-dependent factor. Kasi its effects become stronger or more intense, lalo na yung amoy, as the fish population increases. So, mas maraming isda, they would produce more waste, leading to higher ammonia concentrations, which can then negatively impact fish health. But when the population is smaller, ammonia levels remain low and are less likely to harm fish. So this makes ammonia toxicity or ammonia buildup a density-dependent regulation mechanism that influences fish population density. Okay, one more. Let's say nakatira kayo sa New York, ganon. Wow. And a sudden and severe drop in temperature causes a lake to freeze over rapidly. And this reduces oxygen diffusion into the water and it makes the conditions harsh for the fish. Maraming fish ang nag-struggle at namatay dahil dun sa freeze. So, is the temperature drop a density-dependent or density-independent factor? Okay, let's hear from Jasper.
Hi, Miss. I think it's a density independent factor because it's more from natural and environmental causes rather than the population itself. So it's independent.
Okay, let's see if Saves, do you agree or disagree?
I agree po. It's also a density independent factor for the same reason.
Okay, and Nikita, how about you?
I agree din po since temperature drop is more of an external factor po.
Okay, so in this case, the drop in temperature is a density independent factor because it affects the fish population regardless of its population density. So kahit marami or konti yung fish dun sa lake, yung extreme cold would impact them equally. Kumbaga, hindi yung dami ng isda yung nag-cause ng pagbagsak ng temperature. So again, if you compare this to density-dependent factors, which become stronger as population size increases, this environmental change affects all individuals in the population, regardless of their density. Okay, so hopefully, gets na natin yung principles niyan. But moving forward, let's now look at the exploitation ecosystem hypothesis na pinakita din dun sa isa sa mga pre-recorded lecture. Ito yung hypothesis na nagpe-predict kung anong mga factors ang nagko-control sa population density dependent on the trophic levels or kung merong plants, herbivores, or carnivores sa isang ecosystem. So let's say we have the following ecosystem na merong 4 instances or 4 situations. The first column represents an ecosystem with plants only. The second column represents the presence of both plants and herbivores. The third column represents an ecosystem with plants, herbivores, and carnivores. And the fourth column represents an ecosystem with plants, herbivores, carnivores, and secondary carnivores. So for my first question, what controls the population of plants in column A? So kung column A lang yung meron tayo, ano ang nagko-control sa population ng plants? Mariela, go ahead.
Competition between the plants controls their population po.
Okay, Neil, do you agree or disagree?
I agree po because there's no other organism with them po.
Okay, and Jay, how about you?
I agree with my two classmates po since there are only plants in the well, in the environment or the ecosystem that's being talked about for A. So there's only competition among the plants.
Okay, thank you so much. So, in an environment or an ecosystem where plants are the only ones that exist, according to the EEH or Exploitation Ecosystem Hypothesis, walang ibang magkocontrol ng population nila except their competition with each other. Kasi at the end of the day, we're dealing with carrying capacity. So, kung gaano ka-limited yung resources, yun lang yung nagsasabi kung gaano kadami ang plants na meron dun sa ecosystem. But let's say, doon na tayo sa column B. Ano na yung nagko-control ng population ng plants pagdating sa column B? Okay, Miyaki, go ahead.
Hello po, Miss. In column B po, the plants are limited now with herbivores kasi na-add na po sila sa sa community po. And then yung herbivores po, na limited na po sila ng competition with herbivores din po.
Okay, Art, do you agree or disagree with Miyaki?
I agree po with Miyagi's answer.
Okay, and Saves, how about you?
I also agree po with Miyaki's answer.
Okay. So in this case, once you move forward to column 2, because herbivores eat plants, they're the ones, the population size of the herbivores are the ones that are now controlling the population size of the plants. And as Miyaki has mentioned, since the herbivores, in this case the ants, are dependent on the plants for survival, in their case, their population size is controlled by their competition with each other. Okay, so one more question regarding the EEH. How about in column C? What controls the population of plants in column C? Saves, go ahead.
So first po yung plants, pwede ba sila nag-compete with one another? But then may herbivores, so yung plants na limit ng herbivores. Kaso with the entry of the carnivores, yung herbivores po ay limited by the carnivores.
And so, ano yung nagko-control sa population ng plants?
Yung herbivores po, or pwede rin pong, herbivores.
Okay, Bryson, do you agree or disagree?
I disagree with the control. So the introduction of carnivores to predate on the herbivores. The carnivores become responsible for controlling the population of herbivores, which means that instead of being controlled by the population being controlled by the herbivores, the plant population is more controlled by competition among themselves.
Okay, thank you for that, Bryson. Erica, tiebreaker, what controls the population of plants in column C?
For me po, yung carnivores po, since both po yung plants and yung carnivores po, nakaka-control po sila by competition po. Since for plants po, for herbivores po, nakakontrol po sila ng carnivores po. So, yung carnivores po, nagko-compete po sila for resources po. Same din po for plants. Nagko-compete din po sila.
Okay, so in the case of column C, it's competition again that's limiting the population of plants. Bakit? Kasi kung titingnan natin ang EEH, ang plants become limited by competition when both herbivores or carnivores are present. Kasi merong tinatawag na top-down control by carnivores na nagpapababa or nagre-reduce sa herbivore pressure. And dahil kumukonte yung herbivore pressure, this allows plant populations to grow again until they reach their limits due to competition. So, para mas maintindihan natin, tingnan natin yung step by step ng EEH. So, kung meron lang tayong plants, walang herbivores, walang carnivores, ang mga halaman natin ay nagko-compete for water and nutrients. Pati na din sunlight kung nagtatakipan sila ng dahon. But so, because of this, plant populations are limited by competition. Sa column 2, nung nagpasok na tayo ng herbivores, pero again, wala pang carnivores, yung herbivores, kinakain nila yung halaman. So, nagpapababa yon ng population density ng plants. So, plants are no longer limited by competition, but rather by herbivory. So, nagiging top-down yung control. Herbivore populations now become regulated by food availability. So, nagiging competition na ang reason kung paano sila dumadami or kumukonti. So, ang tawag dyan ay bottom-up na control. Pero, sa column C, pag nagkaroon na tayo ng herbivores at carnivores, yung carnivores, kinokontrol nila yung herbivore population through predation. Dahil mas konti na yung herbivores, plants ay nakaka-experience ng mas konting kumakain sa kanila. Bumababa yung tinatawag na grazing pressure. And so they can grow more freely. And so, as the plant population density increases, plant populations return to being limited by competition rather than by herbivory. So, tandaan nyo, yung trophic cascade natin. Predators eat herbivores. So, kumukonti yung herbivore. Dahil doon, fewer plants are eaten, plant populations increase, then plants are then free to compete for space, sunlight, and nutrients. So, kumbaga, yung presence ng carnivores ay nag-shift ng plant limitation from herbivory back to competition. Kasi pinapakonti ng carnivores yung herbivores, and since yung herbivores, pwede nilang i-regulate yung plant numbers, pag nabawasan sila, yung plants become limited by competition again. So, just to summarize, one more time, ang sinasabi ng EEH or Exploitation Ecosystem Hypothesis is that in an ecosystem with at least 3 trophic levels, plants, herbivores, and carnivores, plants will be limited by competition rather than by herbivory kasi yung carnivores indirectly protect plants by keeping herbivore populations in check. Okay? Clear? Any questions so far? Okay, kung wala, sige. Kung wala tayong question, let's practice some math. Okay, wait lang. Baka yung sagot yung nakalagay. Okay. So this time, balik tayo sa fecundity schedules. Okay? So normally, pag nagpapakompute ako sa inyo ng net reproductive rate dun sa mga dating examples, ang binibigay ko ay L sub x. Pero kung ipagko-combine natin yung math ng life tables at fecundity schedules, what if N sub x naman yung ibigay ko? Sige nga, given the information presented on the screen, please compute the net reproductive rate of this population. I-reveal natin yung sagot pag may 3 tao nang nakataas ang kamay. So again, I'll give you some time. Please compute for the net reproductive rate of this population. Okay, we have 3 people with their hands up. Mariela, go ahead. What's your answer?
2.51.
Okay, Camille, how about you?
2.5 po, Miss.
Okay, and Queenie?
2.51 din.
Okay, let's see if their answers are correct. Okay, so if you are given n sub x and m sub x, but you need to compute for net reproductive rate, the first thing that you need to do is convert n sub x to L sub x. And in order to do that, remember the formula that you need to divide n sub x with n sub 0 in order to get L sub x. So again, n sub 0 is the initial size of the cohort, which is in this case, the number of individuals alive at the youngest age class, so 0 to 1. So to get n sub x over n sub 0, or L sub x for age class 0 to 1, you divide 1,000 by itself, so you get a value of 1. To get L sub x for age class 1 to 2, you divide 801 with 1,000, so you get 0.801. To get L sub x of age class 2 to 3, you divide 789 with 1,000 to get 0.789. To get L sub x of the age class 3 to 4, you divide 776 by 1,000 to get 0.776. And you do that for the rest of the age classes that are available for you. Now, once you have L sub x, you are now free to multiply it with m sub x in order to compute for net reproductive rate. So, for example, the reproductive rate of age class 0 to 1 is 1 times 0, so that's 0. The reproductive rate of age class 1 to 2 is 0.801 times 0, which is 0. The reproductive rate of age class 8 to 9 is 0.571 times 0.33, which is 0.18843. And then in order to get the net reproductive rate, you add everything up. So that will get you a net reproductive rate of 2.5. Now, given this, and again, your three classmates are correct, what does this mean about the population size of this species? Is it growing? Is it stable? Or is it shrinking? Natalie, what's your answer?
It's growing po since it's greater than 1.
Aisel, do you agree or disagree?
I agree po, since the net reproductive rate is greater than 1.
And Mika, how about you?
Yes, I agree po na it's growing because it's greater than 1 po.
Okay. Now, given that, let's say this is a species that reproduces in a sexual manner. What does 2.5 represent? Again, if the species reproduces primarily in a sexual manner, what does 2.5 represent? Henrik, go ahead.
Number of reproducing females that are number of reproducing females po, or
Okay.
productively available females.
Okay, so 2.5 represents the number of offspring that will become females in the future. So please note that for organisms that are sexually reproducing, which is most organisms, then we only care about the fecundity schedule of females. So the L sub x that is present here is mostly for the female population. So you don't really care about the L sub x of the males when you're computing for net reproductive rate. Okay, again, what's important is your females, regardless kung polygamous or monogamous sila, basta reproducing females sila, yun ang kino-compute natin for fecundity schedules. Sige, let's have another question. If I was going to exterminate this species because they were pests, what age group should I target and why? Again, if these species were pests and I want to exterminate them, what age group should I target and why? Miles, go ahead.
Yung age class po is yung 6 to 7. Since yan po yung may pinakamalaki na which is 0.86. So dapat sila po yung tanggalin.
Okay. Bryson, do you agree or disagree?
I agree po, because it's also like No, so that's like the highest reproductive rate na age. So if we exterminate that one, it will significantly lower the population growth.
Okay, how about you, Kelly?
I agree din po na yung ages 6 to 7 po yung i-exterminate.
Okay, so in this case, the answer is actually a little tricky. Yes, you target 6 to 7, but you'll notice that if you deduct the reproductive rate of ages 6 to 7 to the net reproductive rate, our net reproductive rate is still greater than 1. So lalaki pa rin yung population niya. So this means you need to target more than just one age class. So apart from age class 6 to 7, you might want to target the next age class that contributes the most, which could be age class 3 to 4, but still not enough. You might want to target age class 7 to 8 also. So this means that instead of just targeting one age class, you might want to target age classes 3 to 8 in order to reduce the net reproductive rate to less than 1. So ang goal natin pag nag-exterminate is to make sure that the net reproductive rate gets reduced to lower than 1 to ensure that the population size of the pests are no longer increasing. Okay? Sige. One more question. This time, what kind of growth curve, type 1, type 2, or type 3, is exhibited by this population? Again, what type of growth curve is exhibited by this population? Type 1, type 2, or type 3? Okay, Neil, go ahead. Neil, naka-mute ka just in case you're speaking.
Sorry po. It's a type 1 po since the survivability at early ages until 7 to 8 or 8 to 9 is more than half po compared to the later stages because they
Okay.
survive more in the beginning.
Okay, Bryson, what do you think?
I also agree then that it's type 1 because in like at the age of 6 to 7, which is the highest reproductive rate, there's still like 0.688 or like 2/3 of the population that are still alive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and finally, Mika, go ahead.
I agree po with what they both said that the age of 6 to 7.
Okay, so your classmates are correct. In the sense that you always have to look at the age class with the highest contribution to net reproductive rate, because that shows the age where peak reproduction occurs, and that's our halfway point. So if your L sub X, the percentage of the surviving organisms, is more than half, it means during the juvenile stages, majority of the organisms are surviving. And so this represents a type 1 reproductive curve. Okay, sige. One more. This time, instead of M sub X or L sub X, D sub X is given. Please compute for net reproductive rate. Okay, we now have at least three people raising their hand. Jay, what's your answer?
For this po, it's the net reproductive rate is the same as above. It's 2.5. Even though the age ranges may have changed, I think the number of deaths were only parang yun po yung number of deaths for the number of population that was given in the previous number.
Okay, Mariah, do you agree or disagree?
I agree po that the net reproductive rate is 2.51, the same lang po as previous.
Okay, and Camille, go ahead.
Yes, miss, I agree with my two classmates po. It's 2.51.
Okay, so let's see if your classmates are correct. So again, go back to how we computed for n sub x if d sub x is given. So you start with the bottom of your n sub x, and then to go up to get the value, you add the value on the left and at the bottom in order to sum everything up neatly. So to get the number of individuals living for age class 60 to 65, you add 3 with 3 to get 6. To get the number of individuals living at age class 55 to 60, you add 90 with 6. That's why you have 96. To get the number of individuals living at age class 50 to 55, you add 96 with 156 and you get 252. You go up until you reach the age class 0 to 5, which will give you the initial size of the cohort. For this case, to compute for L sub x, again, it's just n sub x divided by n sub 0, just like what we did earlier. And you will realize it's the same values as the first example, which will lead us to the same net reproductive rate. Because again, to compute for the reproductive rate per age group, it's just Lx times Mx. Okay, so you can have similar assertions from the previous life table here. It's a growing population. The age class that contributes the most this time is 30 to 35. It's a type 1 curve because by the peak reproductive age, majority of the organisms are still alive, and so on and so forth. Okay. So more or less, that concludes the information that I want to update and remind everybody. We still have about 20 minutes before the start of your quiz. Do you have any questions or points of clarification? Now would be the best time to ask, because otherwise we can now close this session to give you some time to review and also to make sure that you are in a place with good internet connection so that you can prepare better for your quiz and so that you take the quiz in a seamless manner. So any questions po? Okay, if none, then that's it for today. For Thursday, please don't forget to bring your scientific calculator, your pencil, your eraser, and your folder to cover your answers. Okay, so good luck with your preparations for the quiz and also for the exam on Thursday. Thank you very much, everybody. See you.